Welcome to ADI TV. In this second part, I'm going to open up my image, this demo image here. I'm going to open up in Photoshop so I can adjust some of the colours. Now, I can right click or control click, holding control on the keyboard and clicking on the icon, and open with. And that allows me to open with Photoshop, like so. Alternatively, I can pick up the icon of the image. I can drop it on the PS logo on the dock. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And Photoshop's going to open, and it's also going to open the image like so. Now if your Photoshop doesn't look like this, often the Photoshop opens in the configuration that the last person who used it. So if you want to reset it so it looks like how I've got it here, if you go up to this drop down menu and the contextual menu and click Essentials, that should reset you back to square one. Now it's possible that even that's been moved around, so you can actually reset the essentials down the bottom there. Now what we've got here, we've got our palettes, which is layers, channels, etc, etc. And there's all different types. There's history, brushes, all different types of palettes. And there on the right hand side, we've got the contextual menu along the top, which is this one here. And we've got the toolbar on the left hand side. Now I'm not going to go too much into all the different tools. You can go through ADI TV and look at some of those things, some of the tutorials there to help you out. What I am going to point out is that if you are looking for a palette that you can't find, then chances are you'll find it in Window, and these are all a list of all the different palettes you can have open. But right now we've got enough to be getting on with. So looking at the image, if I zoom in, I'm going to press Apple Plus on the keyboard, and that's going to zoom in. You can see that the actual image looks quite milky. It hasn't got much depth to it. The blacks aren't really black and the whites aren't really white. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a levels to adjust the blacks and the whites. I'm also going to try and get this background looking white. Now if I also hold down spacebar, you notice the hand that comes up and I can move around my image. Now you notice that the background is far from perfect. And we want this to be white. But without sort of encroaching on the rest of the image. So right now I've got my layers palette, which is going to allow me to add my levels in a non-destructive way. And I'll kind of explain more about this as we go along. I'm going to go down to this button down here, create new fill or adjustment layer, and I'm going to add the levels adjustment layer. Click on levels, and that's going to open this palette over here, properties. Now, depending on your screen, it might not open up over here. And if it doesn't open up there again, you can go to Window, go down to Properties and open that up. And what it's done is opened up a histogram, which represents the tonal information inside the image. And we can see there's a peak down here. This is the blacks down at this end. And this is the whites at this end. And we can see there's a big peak just off screen, which will be the white on the background here. So what we're really looking to do is we're looking to tweak these settings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the blacks in, and you can see what's happening to the image. See, it's getting more defined. I can actually bring that in to about there. Now your image, you'll just have to gauge this how you see fit. I'm also going to bring in the white point to about there. Now what I'm really looking for, so I don't want to overcook the image, so I don't want to make it too white or too black, but also I noticed that by doing that, the mid-tone for me looks a bit too strong. So what I need to do is back that off a little bit. I'm going to move this grey point, which is in the middle here, and one way makes it stronger, one way makes it sort of less strong. So I'm going to move that. And I don't want to kind of kill the skin tone, but I do want to make that headscarf a little bit lighter. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Let's just zoom out. Apple minus. So that's looking pretty good, looking better. If I kind of turn this with a little eye button on this palette, on and off, I can see the difference. So that's before and that's after. So you can see it's a marked difference. Now it might be that this is actually pushed a little bit too far. So I'm going to pull those blacks out a little bit. that's looking pretty good. Now you notice that it's looking pretty good in terms of the image of the person, but the background is still looking pretty bad. And if I zoom in, pan around with the spacebar, you can see it's not really white. Now what this has done, this has created this adjustment layer. It's created an adjustment layer which can actually adjust the entire image. There again, I can turn it on and off here. And in Photoshop, you're free to kind of create different versions of this adjustment layer, and you can just toggle them on and off, and they will line up one above the other. So what I want to do is this is actually applying it to the whole image, but what I want to do now is apply a levels to just the white area. So I'm going to need to select the white area. So I'm going to zoom out. And I go to my quick selection tool, which is over here on the 4 down. And this actually supersedes what previously was the Magic Wand tool. The Magic Wand tool is still there, but the quick selection tool is infinitely better way of doing things. So with that tool selected, I'm going to make sure I'm clicked on the background layer, because if I'm not clicked on the background layer, it's going to select the whole layer, which is not what I want to do. I can actually reduce this properties palette just down a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw over the white area, which is the area I want to keep. It's really simple. Just going to kind of do this. And you can see it's automatically selected the whole white area. Okay, so I've got good selection here. Now what I want to do is I want to add another levels, but I only want to adjust the bit that I've selected. So what it's going to do is if I go back down and create another adjustment layer, another levels layer, what it's going to do by doing that is automatically, as that selection is actually active, it's going to create an alpha channel or a mask, which it applies to that levels. Now you can see basically on this mask here, everything that is black is going to be transparent and everything that's white is going to be opaque. So the effect is only going to affect the opaque parts, so i.e. the white, and it's not going to affect anything in the black. And you can kind of see that the shape of that tool is actually the same shape that's created there. And we've got the properties over here. What I can do is I can adjust the levels, and what I want to do is I want to push the whites so that it essentially everything in this tonal area, which is white all the way through to grey, and these are the areas of grey, and the corners will turn to white. So if I push that, you can see that the image pretty much, if I go to the foot of that where that starts to peak up, that's pretty much all the image is white in the background. There again, I can toggle that on and off to see the difference. So that's great. If I click in that, it doesn't really affect the person or the bit that's not included in the matte, but it's included in the background. So with this simple setup, I've got my background image, got my levels, which is adjusting the whole image, and then using a selection, I then create another levels, which now is only adjusting the bit that I selected, which is the white. And so you can see with toggling that one on and off, it's only affecting the background and not actually the person. So I don't want to affect the person, I've already adjusted that, and that's fine. So with Photoshop now, I can save this file, go File, Save. And I'm going to put this on the desktop, and I can just save this exactly as it is, saving the name. I want to make sure that I've got a PSD file, so that's a Photoshop file. I want to include layers, and you can enable the color profile, that's fine. And hit save. That's going to save that. It's pretty quick on this machine. Okay, so that brings us to the end. Just going to close Photoshop. I'm not actually going to quit it, but I'm just going to close it down just so I've got a bit of space. Okay, and here is the Photoshop file. So next up, we'll be putting the files into a project folder, which is really important for keeping everything together for InDesign. And we'll move on to the next step. The School of Arts and Digital Industries at the University of East London.